Having shelf-stable meals on your shelves ready to go in an emergency can be a true comfort. What would you do if a situation like that happened around the holidays? Having emergency meal kits for holiday dinners could help you keep a sense of tradition no matter what you're dealing with. Hey guys, it's Jara with Wicked Prepared. Welcome back everyone. Today I've got some more shelf-stable emergency meal kits, otherwise known as meals in a bag. Now that the holiday season has begun, it got me thinking that it would be nice to have some meal kits with holiday themed meals. For me, one of the most important parts of the holidays is tradition, and a big part of our traditions is centered around food. So being able to honor those traditions to a certain degree, no matter what is going on in the world around us, is important to me. So I decided to put together some holiday meals in a bag to have in our pantry. I've come up with meals for Thanksgiving, Christmas, St. Patrick's Day, and Easter. And I was planning to show them all to you today, but I realized that was going to make for a very long video. So I decided to cover Thanksgiving and Christmas today, and then I'll do the other holidays in an upcoming video. So if you like this kind of content, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss the next installment. Also, stick around because a little bit later in this video, I'm going to be showing you the secret word that you can use to get an extra entry into this month's giveaway drawing for the awesome prize that we're giving away. Before I get started, I just wanted to explain real quick how I do my meals in a bag for those of you who haven't seen any of my other videos. Basically, everything you need to make the complete meal is in the bag, and I also include any water that's needed. These are great for emergencies, especially if the power's out, because you don't have to open your fridge and you don't have to go rummaging around in dark cupboards and dark pantries gathering ingredients. Just grab one bag off the shelf and you're off to the races. We started filling our pantry with these meals for emergency preparedness purposes, but we quickly realized that they would come in handy for so many more reasons. They're great if you just need a quick, easy meal that you don't have to think about at the end of a long day. If you forget to thaw your meat, or you forget to plug in your crock pot, because we've all been there, right? If you need to ask a spouse or your teenager to get supper who's not usually the one who cooks, these are easy options for them. They're also great for giving to others, whether it's a young couple just starting out on their own, a mom who's just had a baby, even as a donation to a food pantry or a shelter. So often, people in need get a box of random food items, and it's difficult to figure out how to turn any of it into an actual meal. Or they might get something like boxed macaroni and cheese, but they don't have milk and butter to prepare it. So getting a complete meal in a bag would be a welcome change. You can do these in any type of bag or container. I've been using a specific bag from Amazon that I really like. I have two different sizes I use, and I also add chalkboard labels to the edge of the bag for the name of the dish. And if it's needed, I include instructions in a self-adhesive CD pocket that I put on the front of the bag. But you can use whatever you have available or whatever you like. I've done this in large Ziploc bags. I have bought gift bags, paper gift bags from Dollar Tree. I have done these in little shoebox size storage boxes like Sterilite containers. I like that option because they can stack, but it also limits you with what you can actually fit inside. Whatever works for you and fits into your budget will do. Okay, let's get started with our first holiday meal in a bag. For my Thanksgiving emergency meal kit, of course, I've got some turkey. This is Keystone turkey. Keystone makes great canned meats. This is a very large can. This is 28 ounces, I believe. Other options, if you don't have Keystone, you can't get Keystone, you could use home canned. I think Walmart has a smaller can of turkey meat that you could use maybe 2 of those. You could also use canned chicken in its place if you can't find turkey. And of course, I've got some turkey stuffing to go with that. I've got some green beans for our green vegetable. I've got a couple of cans of Campbell's soup, cream of mushroom, and cream of chicken is what I'm using. I've got a can of cranberry sauce here. This is a must-have for us with Thanksgiving. It's not Thanksgiving without cranberry, but we do eat this any time of the year. My kids love it. We serve it as side dishes with lots of different meals, and I also have recipes that call for it, so that's a family favorite. I do have a pouch of mashed potatoes. This is the just add water type of mashed potatoes so that we don't need any additional ingredients. And then I have a jar of turkey gravy that we can serve on our potatoes. I also have a small bottle of water here. This is just a 10-ounce bottle, and this should be enough because we're going to utilize all the water and broth that is in the cans of the turkey, of the green beans, and we're going to utilize that in our recipe, so we won't need much additional water, because in emergencies that's really important, to conserve water and to not to waste anything. Let's go ahead and get this in the bag. I am going to use my larger size bag for this meal. All right, ready to fill. First, I'm gonna put in my turkey and my green beans and my stuffing. I'm gonna put in my 2 cans of soup. I'm gonna add my can of cranberry sauce, my jar of turkey gravy, my pouch of mashed potatoes, and my bottle of water. And now this bag is ready to go on the shelf. I do just want to point out that when I'm putting these together for the camera, I know I'm going to be cooking this up to show everyone how it turns out. So I might use older cans that are at the front of my pantry ready to be used. But when I put these together to put on the shelf, I use the freshest, newest cans that I have, or I go purchase new cans. So I would suggest using brand new fresh ingredients for all these bag meals, just so that they'll have the longest possible shelf life on your shelf. Now, of course, for meals like this, you're gonna wanna make sure that you have a manual can opener on hand. We should always have a manual can opener in our home and with our emergency supplies. If you're worried about possibly not having a can opener, or if you might be giving this bag to someone else, what I've done sometimes is included the small military style can openers right in the bag because they're very small. They just slip right in. They're very inexpensive. You can buy a whole bunch of them at once. That way you don't have to worry about it if you don't have a can opener. We do have an emergency cooking kit which includes a manual can opener. That's with our emergency gear just in case we were to have to, take this and leave our home for some reason or be shut in a different area of our home. We'll have that kit with us. And I will link the video of that emergency cooking kit box down in the description box below this video. I'm just going to use 1 mixing bowl to mix this up. I'm going to use the same mixing bowl for all the different parts of it. It only actually has 2 parts. I am going to start with a can of green beans. Now this one has a pop top, so I don't have to worry about my can opener. Now I am going to be saving and using all the liquid from these cans just because we don't want that to go to waste. In an emergency situation, water is going to be precious. So if we can utilize it, we're going to do that rather than waste it. And the water that these things are canned in is really just water and salt and then a little bit of, flavor and color from the vegetable. So this can actually contained all the water that I would need for the stuffing mix. So I'm going to set that aside and I'm just going to put my green beans right into my bowl. And then I'm going to be using my cream of mushroom soup. So this is going to be the bottom layer of the casserole, and it's going to be basically like a green bean casserole. I love this little skinny scraper for getting things out of cans like this. I've had multiples of these. I have multiples of these. It's from Pampered Chef, and it's one of those things where it's not too expensive, and I use it all the time, so I don't mind having multiples. So, if I would get invited to someone's Pampered Chef party and I just wanted to go and wanted to support my friend, but maybe I didn't have a lot of money to spend or I just didn't really need much at the time, I would always order one of these skinny scrapers. It's one of my most favorite kitchen tools. So I'm just going to mix the green beans and the mushroom soup together. Now, if you wanted, you could include a little bag of French fried onions from the Dollar Tree. They sell a small bag of French fried onions that's perfect for meals in a bag. You could include that and you could dump a little bit of those into this mixture and then you could dump the rest over the top of the casserole for a nice crunchy topping if that's a Thanksgiving flavor that you really must have. I didn't do it just because I love French fried onions. We eat them all the time. Not just for Thanksgiving, once again, like the cranberry sauce, but I just didn't want to have too many ingredients in this meal in a bag. I kind of want to make it simple. If you want to add on to it, then you can do that. Now, I am not going to use that foil pan because I am not in an emergency situation without power and water. So I'm going to use just a regular 9x13 pan, just so I don't waste a disposable one. Now, if you happen to be in your kitchen and you have nonstick spray, you can go ahead and spray it, but that's definitely not necessary. I'm just going to empty the green bean layer into the casserole and spread it out. Now, if you are not a person who likes green beans or likes green bean casserole, then you could leave this layer right out. It's just a little extra addition to make it a little bit more Thanksgiving-y in my eyes without having to have a bunch of separate dishes that we're going to cook. But that's up to your personal preference. You could just do this casserole without this layer. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and set this aside. And I'm going to go right back to this same bowl. I'm going to go ahead and open up my can of turkey. Now, Keystone makes the best meats, but if you don't have a big can of turkey like this, you could use home canned, a quart or even a pint. You could use store-bought canned chicken or home canned chicken. Turkey is just going to give it a little bit more of a Thanksgiving-y flavor. Now, once again, I'm going to pour this liquid off. It's really just broth that was created by the turkey as it cooked. and a little bit of fat from the turkey. And since our stuffing mix calls for water and butter, and we don't have butter, the fat is actually going to be just what we need. Now I'm going to go ahead and use my skinny scraper just to break this turkey up a little bit in the can. And now I'm going to go ahead and add the stuffing mix to the bowl and the water that we need to prepare the stuffing, which is 1.5 cups. And that's actually exactly the amount of broth that I got out of that can. So I'm going to use the broth with a little bit of fat. That's going to be the butter that we would have used. Or it's going to substitute for the butter that we would have used. Now I don't need to actually cook this right now. I'm just going to be adding the water, and it will cook as it bakes. Now, like I mentioned, this does bake. This is a bake. And so I will talk about some options for baking if you're in a situation without electricity and without power. I'll talk about that at the end of the video because there are definitely some options. Okay, to the stuffing, I'm going to go ahead and add the turkey meat. And I'm going to go ahead and mix this in and just sort of spread this around all the stuffing. You can break it up as you go. You don't want it too shredded, but you don't want really big chunks either. And next, I'm going to go ahead and add my cream of chicken soup. See, the stuffing is already getting soft from absorbing the liquid that we put in. This smells just like Thanksgiving. Stuffing is my favorite. That's why I am not too sad if I don't have the potato. I would rather have the stuffing. All right, so once this is all pretty well mixed, there's not any big clumps of the cream of chicken soup, then we're going to go ahead and add this over that layer of green beans. And whenever you're doing something like this, it kind of helps to dollop it around kind of evenly, and it's just easier to spread without making, you know, a big mess. I guess what I meant to say was rather than just dumping it all in the center and trying to spread it from there, it helps to spread it out a little bit first. The less spreading you have to do of the top layer, the less you're going to disturb that bottom layer. I'm going to go ahead and pop this in the oven. I've got my oven set at 350, but this is one of those recipes that's going to be very forgiving. So if you are using an alternative method of baking, like an emergency type of oven, sometimes they're a little bit harder to regulate the temperature. So this is going to do fine, regardless of if you're a little bit over or under temperature. You might just have to watch that it doesn't over brown, use some foil, or you might have to cook it a little bit longer if your temperature is lower. It's going to come out great no matter what. So while the casserole is in the oven, I'm going to go ahead and prepare some mashed potatoes. And I'm going to actually use the water that we had from the green beans. It's really just water and salt. It does have a little bit of color, maybe some little specks of green bean from the green beans, but it's better than wasting all that water in my opinion. Of course, you could also do something else with it, like use it in a soup, or someone could actually drink it. It would be good with some electrolytes and things like that. But we're going to use it for our dinner. Now, the potato package calls for 2 cups of water. I got about 1.5 cups out of those green beans. So I'm just going to use a little bit of water out of my bottle here to equal 2 cups. And all we really have to do is bring this to a boil really quickly and then just stir in the potato. And that's all. You can see there is a little piece of green bean floating around in that water. If you wanted to pull that out, you could. I'm not too worried about it. When we have Thanksgiving dinner, everything usually kind of jumbles all together on the plate anyways. And I kind of like to have a little bit of everything in every bite. So I'm not going to worry about that, but you could pick it out if you wanted. Putting a lid on my pot is just going to help it boil a little bit faster and save a little bit of fuel. I'm also going to go ahead and open the cranberry sauce while we're waiting for all this to get done. Now you could slide this out onto a plate and slice it, like we typically do, but if you are in a situation where it is some sort of emergency, some sort of power outage or anything like that, you could just scoop it out and serve it in little dollops. It doesn't have to be sliced nicely. Oh, okay, this is boiling, so I'm going to turn off the heat and just dump in my pouch of potatoes and just give this a quick stir. I'm going to use the same skinny spatula that I've been using for everything else. I'm sure I've got that all moistened. I'll go ahead and put the cover back on and just let that set for just a couple of minutes. And as you can see with this cranberry sauce, a paper plate works just as well. And that's actually a pretty important item to have in your emergency preps is some paper plates, paper bowls, disposable flatware, things like that. So if you don't have, running water, electricity and things like that, you're not necessarily stuck with a bunch of dishes. That's going to be for a short-term emergency. Obviously, you couldn't stock up on enough disposable goods for a long-term emergency, and you need to have things that you would wash and things to wash them with for something like that. All right, right, I think our potatoes are pretty much done. Okay, this was about 35 minutes in the oven at 350, and you can see it's done. It's starting to brown on the top, and it is bubbling around the edges. It smells delicious. This is ready to serve. All right, so now let's serve our Thanksgiving feast. And of course we can add some turkey gravy. Now you could heat this if you wanted to. You could serve all the potatoes and use the pot to heat the gravy, but I think that the heat from the food will warm it just fine. You could also put some on top of the casserole if you wanted. And there we go. That would make a Thanksgiving under tough circumstances that much better. The dessert that I'm going to be putting together for our Thanksgiving dinner is going to be pumpkin pie cupcakes. Now I adapted this from a recipe that I found online and just changed it to be all shelf stable. So what I've got here is a can of pumpkin. This is not the pumpkin pie filling, it's just the pure pumpkin, and it's the regular size can, not the really big one. I've got the small can, 5-ounce can of evaporated milk. Some people tell me they have had a hard time finding these. I get mine at Walmart. I will put a link down in the description box just in case your Walmart doesn't cover it. You may be able to order it and have it shipped. I do get a lot of canned items shipped to my house from Walmart. I've got all of my dry ingredients here. I put these in a mason jar. And what I've put in the jar is just all of the dry ingredients that I need for this recipe. So I'm starting with 2/3 of a cup of flour. And next I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder and a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and I am going to run this one through a little fine mesh sieve just because it tends to have clumps. I usually would have done that with the baking powder too, I just forgot. I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice. Now this dispenses, I just have to open this up, and each click of this dial is going to give a 1/4 teaspoon, so I'm going to want to do 8 clicks. All right, so that is going to be 2 teaspoons of that. And I'm also going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla powder. And next I'm going to put in a 1/4 cup of scrambled egg powder and 3/4 of a cup of sugar. And now I'm going to go ahead and throw a 2-piece lid on this, a 2-piece mason jar lid. Now these lids are nice and airtight, so this stuff is going to stay good for quite a while without any special treatment. Probably the first thing that would go bad would be your leavening ingredients, baking powder, baking soda. So I'm going to assume that this is probably going to be good at least a couple of years on the shelf, sealed up like this, as long as those ingredients were fresh to begin with. But I'm not going to do anything special to mine. You could label this if you wanted, but because this is going to be in my bag with everything else, I think I'm all set. Just like this. And then I've got some Dream Whip here. This is a box that contains 2 packets. I'm just going to be taking 1 packet out of here, so I'm going to go ahead and write what it is and the instructions right on the packet because I won't have the instructions and everything that are on the box. If you wanted, you could just include the whole box with both packets. You would need more water because this is an 8-ounce bottle of water. This is exactly as much water as I need for both the whip topping and for the cupcakes. So if you want to include the whole box of Dream Whip and have more whip topping, then just include a larger bottle of water. I'm also including this little Mylar bag, and in this bag I've put 2 tablespoons of instant milk powder and a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla powder. And these are going to be the additional ingredients that we're going to need for the Dream Whip. You could use any type of Mylar bag, or you could even use a little baby food jar. A very small baby food jar is a great way to store these little ingredients. I'm going to be adding some instant milk powder to this, and I'm also going to be adding some vanilla powder. So in this little bag, I'm adding 2 tablespoons of instant milk powder, and I'm also adding a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla powder. Just going to mark this. And I'm also going to mark the Dream Whip bag. It's already marked with the Dream Whip, so I'm just going to put the instructions. All right, there we go. Now, if you wanted to, you could always heat seal the top of this bag right above the tear strip, so you'd still be able to tear it, but I don't think that's going to be necessary because I don't plan to keep these on my shelf any longer than a couple of years. If we haven't used it by then, we'll use it and replace it with a new one. All right, let's get these in the bag. I think the smaller size bag is going to work perfectly for this dessert. I'm going to go ahead and add my dry ingredients first, and my can of pumpkin, my can of evaporated milk, I'm going to add my 8-ounce bottle of water. I'm going to add my Dream Whip packet and my milk packet. I'm also going to throw some of these foil cupcake liners right into the bag. I've just taken out what I need and put them into a Ziploc baggie. If you wanted, you could also include a disposable foil muffin pan right in the bag with this if you wanted. And this bag is ready to go on the shelf. Now to mix this up, I'm just going to need one mixing bowl. Of course, make sure, like the other recipes, that you have a manual can opener available or throw one in the bag. And I'm just going to start by emptying my dry ingredients into the bowl so I can get those kind of mixed together and disperse all the spices and everything before we add the rest of the ingredients. I'm just going to whisk those up, but if you didn't have a whisk, you could just mix it with a fork or a spoon, whatever you were going to mix the cupcakes with. I just like to use a whisk because I have one right here. And I gotta tell you, this smells amazing. All that pumpkin pie spice in here smells really good. So into this, I'm gonna add my can of pumpkin. And next, I'm gonna add my can of evaporated milk. And I'm gonna add a half a cup of water from my bottle. Now that's basically gonna be accounting for the water that was needed to reconstitute the scrambled egg powder and the fact that my can of milk was a tiny bit short from the measurement of evaporated milk that the recipe called for. So a half a cup of water should be perfect. And now we're just gonna mix this all together. I love these kind of spatulas for stirring just because I can make sure that I'm scraping every bit off the sides and the bottom of the bowl. And then at the end, when I'm divvying this out into the cupcakes, I can also use this to make sure I get every last bit of the mixture out of the bowl. All right, so that looks pretty well mixed. Now, because I am home in my own kitchen, I'm going to be using a scoop to put this over here because it's going to be a little bit easier. But if you were doing this in a situation where you didn't have access to something like this, or this was given to somebody who doesn't have a scoop or something like that, it's fine. You could just use that same utensil that you stirred it up with to move it into the cupcake liners. Now I'm going to go back and add a little bit extra to the ones that I underfilled. Hopefully these won't end up all over the place. I know they're going to rise and then they're going to collapse after they start to cool. So hopefully it won't be too much of a mess. I'm going to flatten these out and then I'll see where I could use a little bit of extra. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and throw these in the oven. Like I said, it's 350 and these are going to go for 20 minutes or until they're set. I'll be right back. Okay, so these are done. Now they look a little bit like a cupcake now, but they are, like I said, going to fall and be more of a pumpkin pie texture. So I'm going to set these to cool and get to work making the whipped topping. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the Dream Whip, the whipped topping, and I'm going to be using this, my rotary egg beater thing. It's definitely important to have tools in your kitchen that can stand in for your power appliances. If the grid happens to be down, the power happens to be out, or you never know, maybe your appliance is going to die. You have a backup. I could do this in my KitchenAid. It would be a lot easier. And in fact, I could run my KitchenAid off of my portable power station, but I'm going to try to do it the old-fashioned way. I grew up in a house with no electricity, and when my mother made whipped cream, this is what she used every time. We never had whipped cream in a can. I think it was probably invented by then. I'm not that old, but we just never had it. So I'm going to use a metal bowl. That's always best when you're whipping things like this, and have things as cold as you can. Of course, if the power's out, you might not be able to have things super chilled unless you live in a cold climate and it's winter, because then you can just stick things right outside and you've got a refrigerator right there. I'm going to go ahead and start by putting my milk powder with the vanilla powder right into the bowl. And I'm going to add our last half a cup of water. I'm just going to mix that a little bit. This is instant milk, so that's all it needs is just a tiny little mix. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my packet of whipped topping mix. Now this says it needs to whip for about 4 minutes. I don't know if it might need to go longer, where I'm using a manual option. I'm not super duper excited about doing this by hand, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. I'm going to give this a little mix to get it started, and then I'm going to start whipping. All right, I think this is looking pretty good. This is definitely some whipped topping ready to go. Actually, I don't think that even took 4 minutes. That was pretty painless. This would have been a little bit easier if I had used more of a smaller, deeper bowl so that the mixture was all contained in one spot, so I didn't have to keep moving my beaters around, but that actually really wasn't that bad. So as soon as our little cupcakes are cool, we'll add a dollop of this whipped cream and they'll be ready to go. Okay, so now these are all cool and it's time to serve them up. They smell so good. Okay, let's give it a little dollop of our whipped topping. And look how beautiful that is. Now remember, this has the texture of pumpkin pie. And the good thing about it is because we use that scrambled egg powder, I don't have to worry about how thoroughly it was cooked. Delicious. Now onto our Christmas dinner meal kit. So this is going to be my Christmas dinner meal in a bag. Now I gotta be honest, I struggled with this one a little bit because in our house, honestly, for Christmas, our big meal is breakfast. We have breakfast casseroles and French toast bakes and cinnamon rolls and things. And after that, we're just kind of like crashing for the day. So we've never had a really big Christmas dinner like we do with all of the other holidays. And when I think about Christmas dinner, I always think about the meat being goose, which I've honestly never cooked a goose in my life, but I always associate turkey with Thanksgiving, ham with Easter, corned beef with St. Patrick's Day, but for Christmas, I didn't really have a meat. So I'm gonna do this meal as a roast beef with gravy, and I'm gonna serve it over mashed potatoes. So I've got some Keystone beef. This is really good beef. This is the large can, so this is gonna be quite a bit of meat. And I've got 2 different gravy packets here to make the gravy. I got 1 mushroom and 1 brown gravy. That's just what I chose. You can choose whatever you want. I've got 2 packs of mashed potatoes here just to make enough to serve, 4 or 5 people. I've got the 2 packs of mashed potatoes. These are the just add water kind. They don't require any butter or milk. I did do roasted garlic. I thought that seemed a little bit more fancy, but you could even go, the Idahoan makes some potatoes that are kind of nice and fancy, and they are a little bit better, I think, than these Great Value, but I'm just cheap, so I keep buying the Great Value. But I've got the potatoes. The beef and gravy is going to go over the potatoes. I threw in a little jar of mushrooms, a little can of mushrooms rather, because I think that would elevate the beef to make it a little bit more fancy in my opinion, because I love mushrooms. If you don't, you can leave these out. And then for side dishes for veggies, I've got a can of corn here, and I've got a can of yams. I just thought that would be something different. It would make this meal colorful. If you don't like yams, you could always use some sliced carrots. They even have honey carrots that you can get at Walmart sometimes that I think would be a nice side dish with this dinner. You could do whatever you wanted for side dishes. This is just what I chose to do today. And of course, I do have a couple of bottles of water because we're going to need water to make the mashed potatoes. Maybe a little bit of water for the gravy, but for the most part, I'm going to be using the broth from the beef and the juice from the mushrooms and possibly some of the water from the corn, because I do try to use all of the liquid that I can and utilize it and not waste it, because in emergencies, water and liquid is going to be a precious resource. So I try not to just dump it and throw it away. Let's get going and put this all in the bag. Definitely need the bigger bag for this meal. I am going to start with my beef and my yams, my corn, my mushrooms, my 2 bottles of water, my 2 pouches of potatoes, and my 2 packets of gravy. And we are ready to go on the shelf. So now let's prepare this Christmas feast. This is all pretty basic cooking. It's not really like a complicated recipe, so I'm just going to show you really quickly how I put this together. But this time I'm going to be using something a little bit different for my indoor emergency cooking. I'm going to be testing out using this electric induction burner using our Bluetti power station. I've actually never used an induction burner before, so I'm really excited to try this. We were sent this to test out and to use in some videos and see how we like it. And an induction burner is an energy saving kind of burner because it transfers the heat magnetically to the pots and pans. And so it only heats exactly where the pan is touching. There's no wasted space heating. So I'm really excited to try this. I'm not sure how much we'll use this for emergency cooking or not. That's going to remain to be seen how much energy it uses. I think because it is electric heat, it's going to use quite a bit, but also because it's induction and it's a little bit more energy efficient, it might not be that bad. The thing that I like about this setup is that I have 2 burners here, whereas when I'm using my butane stove, I only have the one unless I get out a second stove. And I also like the fact that I don't really have to worry about running out of fuel. We store a lot of butane, but the amount of butane that we have is finite and it will run out eventually. Whereas using the portable power station, I can recharge this using solar panels, over and over and over and over again for years and years and years. And so this is definitely an option that I'm going to explore. And I think that regardless of how much we do use this for emergency cooking, I'm probably going to be using this burner quite a bit because I always need extra burners when I'm cooking a big meal. I'm always running out of burners on my stove. So this will be nice to pull into service in times like that. And we also might end up using this in our bug out van when we get that all together. So I'm really excited about the possibilities and I'm ready to test this out on this Christmas meal. One thing about an induction type of burner is that you do have to have, well, you don't have to have special cookware, but only certain pots and pans will work on it because it works magnetically. It has to be something that a magnet will stick strongly to, which this set of pots and pans fits the bill. So some of the other pots and pans I have, like my new ceramic coated ones that I actually really like, they won't work with this. But luckily I have this set that will work with the induction. So I'm going to go ahead and get started fixing up the Christmas dinner. I'm going to get the roast beef and gravy going in here. And then I'm going to use my other pan like this from this same set to heat my side dishes. This does have quite a few items that need to be heated, but luckily they're going to heat pretty quickly. And so I'm just going to share the same burner and the same pan, and I'm just going to put them into bowls when they're finished and keep them warm with some foil. And I could use some kitchen towels and things like that to wrap around them if I felt like I need to insulate them. Now I'm going to start by opening up my beef right here, and I'm going to open up my mushrooms, and I'm going to drain the liquid out of these and into a measuring cup because I want to have about 2 cups of liquid for my gravy. And so we're going to see, I bet we'll get almost 2 cups out of these 2 cans. You can, of course, take the fat off the tops of the canned meats if you want, or you can leave it in, or you can kind of do a little bit of both. If you need some, like you would need oil or butter for a pan, this would be a great thing to use. If I was sauteing something in my pan first, but I'm just going to put this all together, so I'm not going to use most of this fat. My dogs will really enjoy it. All of the fat and all of the liquid that's in here came out of the meat. I forgot to show you before I opened this can, but if you remember from my last meal in a bag where I used this kind of beef, it's no water added. It's just like if you had home canned it. You put the meat in with no water and can it, and all of this liquid and fat comes right out of the meat. And now I'm going to drain the mushrooms. Not getting quite as much liquid as I thought I would out of these cans. But I do have my bottles of water, and then I also have my corn, which of course has some liquid in it. So we will take what we need out of the can of corn. It's really just water and salt in here, and it is going to have a little bit of that corn flavor in it, but that's going to be covered up by the taste of the gravy packets. So here's the 2 cups of liquid that I need for the recipe. I'm going to go ahead and put this in my pan. Well, it's not even really a recipe. It's really just making the gravy as stated on the back of the package. So I'm going to go ahead and add both of these packages of gravy. Now I'm just going to whisk this in until this is all smooth and blended. Now I'm going to go ahead and add our mushrooms and our meat to this. Now I can break up any larger chunks, but I am going to be stirring this around as it cooks, and so they will break up some, and I don't want anything too shredded, so I can wait and break them up when this is closer to being done. I add my mushrooms. Now remember, this is just something that I like. I like mushrooms. We like mushrooms in our house. If you don't, then by all means leave these out. Honestly, now that I think about this, if you had some sour cream powder, you could probably turn this into a nice stroganoff and serve it over noodles instead of mashed potatoes, if that was something that you would prefer. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get this on the burner and start this cooking. And at the same time, I'm going to get ready to heat up our side dishes. For the side dishes, I'm going to start with the corn because this is not going to leave very much in the pan that I'm going to have to clean out before I heat my next item. There's not a lot of liquid left in this pan from what I drained out, so I'm going to have to be careful heating it, but that should be just fine. Now I have this meat on kind of low because when I boiled some water in this the other day, it boiled very quickly, so I want to make sure that I don't have this on too high to scorch anything. Now I do have a bowl to put my corn in when it's done. Keep that warm while I heat the next side dish, which is going to be the yams. You can see I've got this turned down a few notches and it's already starting to bubble. All right, this is bubbling and it's thickened up, so I'm just going to turn this way down. Turn the corn up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off for right now. I'm going to drain the last bit of liquid out of the corn and put it in the serving bowl. Now I am just going to serve this as is. We like it that way, but if you wanted, you could get a packet of ghee and keep it in the bag. This is clarified butter, so this would be kind of like putting butter on your corn if you really feel like you need that, or you could throw some butter powder in a little packet into here. I don't feel like we need that, so I'm just gonna serve it as is. I'm gonna drain out this last little bit of liquid and put it into the serving dish and get the yams in the pan. So I'm just gonna use a piece of foil to keep this corn warm while I heat the yams. I just used a piece of paper towel to wipe that pan out after the corn. I'm not really worried about it if there's a couple little bits of corn in there. It's not bad. All right, so these yams are hot. I'm gonna go ahead and turn that off. I'm gonna go drain these, get these into their serving bowl, and then I'm just gonna do the potatoes real quick, and it'll be time to serve. Okay, I've got my yams in their bowl, and I can actually set this bowl right on top of this one so that it can all stay warm together. I think I'm going to mash those yams up. You could also do the ghee packet in those, a little brown sugar, which you could keep in a small little baby food jar, anything you want in those yams. Now for my potato packets, I'm going to need 2 cups of water per package. So I'm going to need 4 cups of water, which should be just slightly less than what I have in my couple of bottles. I'm going to use the same measuring cup that I measured our other water in. I'm not worried about the little bit of beef broth that's left in there. And I just wiped this pan out with that same piece of paper towel. I'm really not worried about any little bits of other veggies that might be left in there. There's 2 cups and another 2. And any little bit of water that's left, somebody can just drink that. So once again, I'm just going to turn this burner on high. I'm going to bring this to a boil, and that's all it's going to take. And then I'll just whisk in my potatoes and let it set with a lid on it. Actually, if I put the lid on now, it'll boil faster. Smart move. All right, so that's boiling. I'm going to turn that off. And real quickly, I just want to show you that that dinner ended up using about 26% of the battery in that. So I could definitely cook 3 meals a day with this, because this was a dinner where I had to heat a lot more things than I might typically, when we're talking emergency meals anyways. So I'm just going to put the potatoes in here. All right, now that that's all mixed in, I'm just going to put the lid on for just about 5 minutes or so, and we'll be ready to serve. Now, if I needed to, I could turn the burner back on and warm this back up, but that feels pretty warm, so I don't think I'm going to need to. Okay, so now everything is ready to serve. Get some mashed potatoes, whoops, and some of our beef and gravy. Corn, and then I did mash up these yams. And there is our beautiful Christmas dinner. This is going to be delicious. For my Christmas dessert, I'm going to be doing a gingerbread. This one's going to be a caramel apple upside down gingerbread. So this is going to use a box of gingerbread mix, and then I've got a can of soda here. This is all I'm going to need to prepare the cake mix. I don't need any of the other ingredients that are listed on the box. I've got this can of caramel apple pie filling to go on the bottom of the cake. Now, if you can't find the caramel apple, you could use regular apple pie filling. You could use a home canned pie filling, or you could just skip the pie filling altogether if you didn't want to use it. And then just to fancy it up and go on the top, I've got a box of Dream Whip. Now, of course, the Dream Whip comes with 2 packets. I'm only going to be using 1 packet, and I've written some instructions on it so that I can take it out of the box. And I've also put together a packet of ingredients to go with the Dream Whip to make it up. Now let's get this in the bag. Now the ingredients for this dessert would fit into the smaller bag, but if I use the larger bag, I will be able to include a 9x13 cake pan as well. So you can do whichever you'd like. All right, ready to go. I'm gonna stick my cake pan in first. It just makes it easier. And next I'm gonna add my gingerbread cake mix. I'm gonna add my caramel apple pie filling. I'm gonna add my can of soda. This is a lemon lime soda. I think you could really use any flavor. I just typically use lemon lime. And then I'm going to add the 2 packets that I need for the Dream Whip. And this bag is ready to go on the shelf. I did forget to mention, but we do need to enclose a small water bottle in this bag because we need a 1/2 cup of water to mix up the Dream Whip. Because you need such a small amount, you could also use one of these emergency drinking water packets, because these contain 4.225 ounces, so just about a 1/2 cup, just about exactly what we need. But it never hurts to have a little bit of extra in case you spill some, or whatever reason you just don't have enough. And then you'd also have extra drinking water for someone to have at that time. So now we're going to do the Christmas dessert, and this is going to be super duper easy. I've got the pan, the disposable pan, And I'm going to go ahead and open up my caramel apple pie filling. And I'm going to start by dumping this right in the pan. This doesn't really even need any nonstick spray. If you have it, you can go ahead and spray, but it'll be fine without it. I've done this plenty of times because I do like to do these with only the ingredients that I put in the bag a lot of the time. Go ahead and spread this out over the bottom of the pan. Go ahead and make sure all the apples are laying down. I do have my oven heated to 350. And now I'm going to put that out of the way and just mix up the cake. I'm just going to add my gingerbread cake mix into the bowl. Going to kind of break up those clumps a little bit. And I'm going to add the lemon lime soda. And just mix this on up. You know, I never thought about it till just now, but I'll bet that ginger ale would be a good soda to use in this because it has the ginger flavor just like the gingerbread. So if it was going to add any extra flavor, I don't ever notice a lemon lime flavor from this, so I don't think it would really matter. But if you have ginger ale, you might as well use it. Right, I'm going to go ahead and pour this on over the top of my apples, and then I'm going to get it into the 350-degree oven. Spread that out a little bit. All right, here she goes in the oven. Okay, our gingerbread is done. It's all firmed up. And you can see it's bubbling around the edges. So I'm going to put this to cool. And when this is all cool, we're going to serve it with the Dream Whip. Now I'm just going to mix the Dream Whip up the same as I did for the Thanksgiving dessert. I'll see you back when this is cool. Okay, so now that the cake is cool, it's time to see if we can cut this without making a mess. Our caramel apple gingerbread. Remember, it has the caramel apple layer underneath. Let's give it a dollop of our whipped topping. And isn't that beautiful? What a delicious Christmas dessert. I promised I would talk about ways to bake items that need to be baked if you have an electric oven and the power's out. Your options are going to depend a lot on what the situation is outdoors because there are more alternative ways to bake outdoors than indoors. My favorite method is one that we use every time we go camping: Dutch ovens with charcoal. And if you run out of stored charcoal, you can also use campfire coals just the same. These Dutch ovens come in lots of different sizes. They have short little legs that hold them up a couple inches off the ground so you can put the coals underneath. And then they have a lid that is sunken in a little bit so that you can also put coals on the top. The number of coals that you use above and beneath determines the temperature that the contents are going to be baking at. This works great. I've done dinners, I've done desserts, breads, all sorts of things in Dutch ovens like this. You can even stack them on top of one another and cook multiple foods at the same time. Another outdoor option that a lot of people love is a sun oven. This is a really good option, especially if you live in a sunny location, because it doesn't require any fuel that you need to store, only the sun's rays. You can also get a camp oven that runs on propane and can hold a 9x13 pan. There's another type of camp oven that sits on top of your camp stove burner, and it's not going to hold as large of a pan, but it does work okay. We have one of those. If you have some tinfoil and a cardboard box, maybe some aluminum tape and a little rack, you can make an oven that you can put charcoal inside of, a cardboard box oven. For indoors, there aren't as many options, but there are ovens that can be run with alcohol gel fuel cans, which is safe to burn indoors. For some things like muffins, you can also steam them in a paper or silicone cup in a pot of simmering water with a lid. That's a trick I learned camping with the Girl Scouts. I'll put links down below for as many of these options as I can. It's a good idea to have one or two options at least. You always want to have backups and backups for your backups. But also keep in mind all of those situations when you might be able to use meals like these, emergency meal kits, even when you do have power. We recently went through a situation in our state where a mass left several areas of the state on lockdown for days because the sugar was unaccounted for. Not only were people supposed to stay in their homes, but the stores were closed, distribution centers were closed, bakeries were closed, everything was closed. So even though people couldn't get out of their homes to get food, they still had power. They could still cook normally. And for some people who ran out of food during that time, meals like these would have come in very handy. Situations like this can occur at any time to any of us without warning. And it could be a situation on a more personal level. Sometimes a job loss or an extended illness can leave us in a tough situation financially, and we've got to live off our food storage just to be able to keep our mortgage paid and our lights on. It doesn't always have to be the end of the world as we know it to need shelf-stable meals and long-term food storage. Earlier, I talked about an extra entry for my giveaway drawing. This month, I'm giving away a Thrive Life emergency meal bucket and a November pantry can specials pack to one lucky winner. If you didn't catch the video I did on November 5th about budget prepping at Walmart, let me give you the rundown real quick. In order to enter to win, you must be a customer of mine on my Thrive Life website. If you're not already a customer, you can create an account for free without even placing an order. There's no purchase necessary to win. Then just text winner to the number on the screen here, and I will text you back with all the details. By doing that, you'll have your name entered once into the drawing. By being a subscriber to this channel, you can get a second entry. And by placing an order this month through Thrive with me listed as your consultant, you'll get a third entry. Now, whether you're entering right now or if you entered the drawing over the last few weeks, you can get one more additional entry, multiplying your chances of winning. All you need to do is text the word thankful to my number right here on the screen. This time of year certainly reminds us to be thankful. And I want you to know, if you're watching this, I truly am thankful that you've tuned in. I've been extremely blessed over the past few years in growing this community. And I'm so thankful for every single person that has taken the time to listen to what I have to say. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Okay guys, that was the first installment in my Holiday Meals in a Bag series. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. We may not all have the same traditional foods, but you can take this same concept and adapt it to your own needs. These meals could also be enjoyed at any time of the year. You don't have to reserve them only for a specific holiday. If you did enjoy the video, leave me a thumbs up. And if you made it all the way to the end, leave me a turkey down in the comments. Make sure you watch this video next to see the emergency cooking kit I put together for our family. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.